Greetings and welcome back to Medieval Engineers Minion Village. Oh yes, look, here we are back at the windmill that we constructed last time. The sails, which are, as many of you pointed out, incorrectly angled for their direction of rotation, unless of course possibly the wind is coming from behind them, which I suppose is a possibility. It is bugging me though. I'm going to have to fix that at some point, no doubt, but unfortunately it's quite a, I mean, it's not a huge task, but it's a bit of an annoying one. So for the time being, I'm just going to ignore it and hope that it goes away. However, what I can't ignore is the fact that the minions, whilst they're very impressed with this place, they can't actually make use of it because you need to be a wizard to get up here, which is, well, it's a bit of a design flaw, isn't it? The minions, of course, need to be able to make use of this place, otherwise it is worthless. Right, let's sort this out. Alright, and if we just fly up and just sort of like reacquaint ourselves with the design, we have the windmill constructed on this great spire of rock here that is rising majestically up out of the ground. What I thought I would do is I would basically have a shaft coming down through the rock. This was suggested by a few people, and I really like the idea. I like the idea of using more of the terrain for building and sort of like designing things and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to like punch a passageway straight through the rock, because I want there to be basically a way out to the farm at the back and a way on the front out to the village. And also by just sort of like punching a hole through here, I effectively set what will be the ground level, if you like, and the idea is that once I've sort of hollowed out a little cavity here, there we go, look, we've gone all the way through. This is going to be the farm exit at the back, and then if we go up into the actual windmill, and then we can sort of dig down from here, and we can just dig down until we reach that cavity. So it's a nice way of making sure that we don't sort of overshoot and wind up, you know, miles below the surface or anything crazy like that. And you know, there was actually a little bit of tidying up to do up here anyway, with the way the terrain was intersecting with the building. So let's do that. We just need to dig down here. We've got a bit of a grass problem. That will happen if you are careless and you place a grass voxel. It can cause quite a lot of grass to sort of spread all over the place, but we will eventually get around to dealing with all of that. For now, we just have to dig this shaft down until we reach our cavity. There it is. There we go. So that you can see the windmill above us, and this is kind of the level that we're going to build out at the bottom. So we need a way to get up and down, obviously, and a set of stairs is the obvious one. So I set about building the stairs and kind of like this. Again, you know, although I had a general idea of what I wanted to achieve, I was essentially making it up as I went along, and so a lot of this is stuff that I will do, and I was going to have just a spiral staircase, like a tight spiral staircase going all the way down, which is what I started building here, and sort of started hollowing out the shaft to be wide enough. And then I actually thought, what would be quite good is if we had like a central shaft down the middle, and then the staircase could wrap around it, and then rather than having people, you know, the minions having to lug all of the grain or whatever it is they want to mill all the way up here to have it milled and then lug it all the way back down again in order to do something, what makes a lot more sense is to transfer the power down. Now, a few people suggested that as well, that I should transfer the power. Of course, you can't actually do that at the moment, and the reason you can't do that at the moment is because there are no gear pieces in the default game. I believe there are some mods and stuff for gears and things that would allow you to turn a shaft at 90 degrees and transmit the power down. And, you know, more importantly as well, the windmill is not actually generating the force at the moment. It's the rotor that's generating the force, and is actually having to work against the inertia of the windmill itself, because there is no actual wind. Or at least there is, but it is a magical wind, and it does not turn the blades. Or something. It depends on what level of suspension of disbelief you wish to engage in at this moment in time. But in mechanical terms, it's basically all being driven by magic. But nonetheless, I wanted to maintain that illusion, and ultimately the time will come when there will be mechanical energy and mechanical power transfers, at which point it would be nice to be able to just adapt it. So we're going to go with the shaft, and we're going to have a shaft basically transmitting power from a rotor up here down to simulate that power transfer. I also wanted to go to extra efforts to make sure that everything looked reasonably secure. So here we just build out the the rock face a little bit to kind of support that section of the stairway. And I come back and I do this in various places, trying to sort of smooth over those edges and make the whole thing feel a little bit more consistent and a little bit more believable, which I think is quite important when you're doing these sorts of builds at this stage, although it's not strictly necessary. Great, there we go. We sort of head up the stairs all the way up the top, and here you see the rotor. We have put the rotor in place, and we're going to transmit the power down now. Now, originally I kind of wanted this to come through a series of axles or something, in order to kind of like secure it for one thing, and also again just to make it look better and more believable, which was what I was intending to do here. And as you see, I place a one of these things, whatever it's called, I forget, and unfortunately it doesn't actually connect up, and this is because at least I assume this is because the rotor effectively puts the central section slightly off of the normal grid, and so it doesn't match up. So basically I had to just have this coming down as is. As you can see here, it just dangles all the way down. It's horrendously dangerous, but clearly I have woven some spells around it in order to hopefully make it slightly less likely to just kind of like snap and kill somebody. You may notice as well that the millstone is not quite high enough up. It's, let's just pretend that it can kind of be lowered down, or you can stick something in there or something. There is obviously a solution, but we'll get to that later. Again, sort of like building up the structural elements of the staircase to try and make it feel a little bit more consistent, and also just to give it a bit more detail and a bit more interest, so that when you're actually going up and down the stairs, you've got these like columns and sections, and the whole thing feels more rugged and believable. So there we go. We've now got a shaft with a reasonably decent staircase, so it is now possible to get up and down, basically. And at this point I decided that rather than just like having a hole in the side or putting a simple doorway in, I'd actually build a little building out onto the front, and this would be kind of like the front warehouse, I guess. This would be where the milled flour and stuff would be stored, to be then taken on to other places within the Minion village, to be turned into, baked goods, donuts, whatever it is. Minions spend their time baking when they are given the tools and facilities to do so. I'm probably brewing ale. Do you need to mill stuff in order to brew ale? I'm not sure that you do. I have never brewed my own ale, to my great shame. But there you go. Little sort of like kink on the end here, and I decided I'd do something a little bit funky. I actually quite like the way that sort of sticks out at that angle. I don't know. Little things please me sometimes. Likewise, I could have just stuck a big wide like round roof on this, but it would have gone up quite tall and kind of sloped up, and I did look at it, but in the end I wanted to create something a little bit more unusual looking. So by kind of having this square building sitting on top of the round building, I think you get a more interesting look, especially because it kind of steps backwards with the rock. So you kind of got this building that kind of tapers upwards, but also changes very much its dimensions as it goes up, almost like the rock face. You've got a rock face is very kind of like random and chaotic and changes as it goes up, and you have the same kind of effect. I mean, I may be getting a bit too pretentious now. I'm not sure. It's possible. However, that was, believe it or not, at least part of what was going through my mind at the time, and I messed around for quite a long time getting these wood bits on, but they eventually do go on successfully. There we go. So we've got a bit of an interior there now, and it's just kind of grass down at the bottom. And at first I tried just raising this up with like a dirt floor, as you'll see here, and we take the level brush so that it's a lot easier to, if you want to just create a flat surface, use the level brush. It saves an awful lot of effort and time, and we just kind of stick in this dirt floor all the way around, which is, I don't know, it's all right, but we will come back to that later on in the build. I step back now, and I'm quite pleased with this actually. I'm quite pleased with this little extra building. I don't know if I should do anything with that sort of second floor up there, or if I should just leave it. For the time being, we just leave it. And we go for a little wander through. At this point, I'm thinking about sort of functionality, like if you've got a cartload of grain and you want to mill it, or I assume it comes as like grain. You take grain or the little seeds or something and you mill them on the millstone. Look, honestly, I'm not an expert in this sort of thing, as in many things, but at the end of the day, I am a wizard, and if I want bread or grain, I conjure it out of thin air. This is for the minions to use, and I am doing my best to help them. And, you know, one of the things the minions have complained about in the past is getting stuff up and down slopes. So I decide to raise the land up here, put a nice gentle slope in so that they can bring carts and stuff in from the farm, carrying whatever it is they want to stick under the millstone. And have a nice sort of like gentle time of it. And so that needs to kind of like obviously lead in as gently as possible without a little step here. So I do a very fine adjustment, expertly, one might say. I think about steps here, but again, I guess perhaps maybe they might want to bring carts up and down, sort of like from the village through. So we go with a slope in the end. And there we go, look. That is now... oh yeah, then we've got to do the front, of course, as well. I mean, you know, there's no point if they're going to bring carts through to this point, they're going to want to bring a cart all the way through, right? And get it out through the front. It would have to be a pretty small cart, to be fair, to fit through the door, but we can always address that later. Minions do like to spend time sitting about, so I give them a little table and chairs and some other decorations, some places to store things. Just ignore what came up on the screen there. You know, some boxes and stuff so they can store stuff as they go, and to make it look a bit more used and a bit more lived in. Likewise, barrels, because barrels are wonderful. Another little chair. Lighting, of course, important as well. I mean, one of the things, because this is all sort of underground, I have noticed that in the world of medieval engineers at the moment, it doesn't really handle being underground very well in terms of the lighting level, so you really have to stick lighting around to justify the fact that it's well lit, if that makes sense, because if you don't, then it can feel very much like there is artificial lighting coming from nowhere. So yeah, we want a building on the back as well, so that the whole thing feels like a properly enclosed structure. And I thought about another kind of like wide round building, but actually in the end I go for this kind of the smaller, tighter curves. And then a couple of entrances, one slightly larger than the other. It may still not be big enough for carts. I guess we will have to look again at that, possibly in the future. Add a roof. Do a quick bit of conjuring of the rock in order to make sure that it's all wind and weather tight and flush and looking good. And nice, and I'm pretty happy with this. I'm happy that we've now got effectively a kind of a sealed entrance on either side, which is good. And if we just walk down, I really like the feel of this. I really like the kind of the fusion of the rock face and tunnels with the sort of constructed walls and the bits of stuff lying about and the torches. Very happy for the most part. I did feel like it needed to be a little bit wider in places and feel a little bit more like chiseled out, a little bit more finished, as it were. So I go around and just being quite fine and quite careful. This is again with the voxel brush off the grid, which just allows for a much more fine level of sculpting. You can get a much better finish by doing that in general. So there we go, making the passage a little bit bigger. I really like this, as I say. Bone Hero suggested that I do like a crypt or something underground. And I really like that idea. I think that is definitely going to be something that we will look at doing very soon in the Minion village, possibly connecting some of the other builds together and generally allowing me to kind of explore this kind of building a little bit more. A little detail, just I figured that, you know, maybe you would want something to kind of catch the ground, the milled stuff, flour and things. So I create like a little sort of like bucket thing there and just put a lip around this top milling stone area and call it done. Awesome. Right, there we go. Look, that is more or less the completed windmill now. We still need to do the rest of the farm, obviously, the fields. We need a farmer's building and maybe a barn and other bits and pieces, but that will have to wait for next time. Until then, we're going to call this done with its impossibly turning sails. I have been Weird Wizard. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and I will see you later.